think we did introduce it. It's Mike Tyson
Yeah,
weed,
so
ladies and gentlemen.
Mike Tyson.
I'm hanging out with these guys
day.
because I'm a Green Beret and I got hurt, and you saw the show last night. So I'm speaking at the shows because Sturgill on his own. Well, let me back up. I got blown up in March, and I was in the hospital. Previous year, I'd like come off of a deployment, had like 11 months before the second one, was a bit down in the dumps, got divorced, had a dude die on the first trip, so it was kind of like, it was real rough to deal with, and then was listening to these dudes quite a bit, and then led into the next deployment. I was there a month, boom, almost died pretty hard. Teammates saved me, and we had blood on the ground, like I got blood on target, and then they made a hellacious movement to get me to the medevac. Long story short, I'm eating dinner in the hospital, one of the first meals, jamming out to these dudes, and I was like, Mom, I want to meet Sturgill Simpson. And then she tried to get a hold of him. SOCOM eventually did, and he came, hung out for like 2 hours. I made my friend now, General Baudet, wait like 15 minutes so that we could finish talking about what we were talking about, which when you're an enlisted dude, you don't make generals wait. But I was on a lot of ketamine, so it was sweet. But then Sturgill had it on his own accord to like donate to the foundation. So this little tour going on that coincides with the actual album release is donating to the Special Forces Foundation. So that helps Gold Star families, which are the families that remained of the friends that got killed on this trip. So there were 4 Green Berets and 2 EOD techs, and so that money's going to them, and that's what I care about. I'm alive. I don't have any legs below my knees for those that can't see my legs on the video anyway. And I don't have my testicles either, so that's a different set of challenges. But I don't care about getting taken care of other than the normal Army processes, but I want them to get taken care of from the foundation. So I'm grateful to have these guys as friends now. They're awesome. They're amazing musicians, but amazing people. And then I'm grateful to be here and just to push that out. So people that are coming to the shows, all that money goes to the foundation, and then people can go on the foundation's website, which is specialforcesfoundation.org. And yeah. I appreciate it.
That's fucking awesome, man.
Yeah,
That's
man.
really, really, really cool. That's really cool that you're doing this, and thank you for coming here and telling everybody this. You know, this is it's a great way to help out, and your music, you know, to connect it to that. I think that's just a fucking incredible thing. It's really cool. You know, when you were sending me the text messages telling me that you were going to the hospital, you know, it's very touching.
It was like, yeah.
Yeah, you were, you know, you could tell you were seriously moved by this. And, you know, for someone like you who truly understands the consequences of war, like the physical consequences in a way that none of us will understand, you know, it's very, not just, it's brave of you to talk about this, but it's also, it's so valuable. So valuable for everybody that hasn't served to understand what it really is. So thank you for that.
Well, I always say I really like combat because I was in a lot of it, relatively speaking. Bunch of guys have been in way more combat. Bunch of people have treated more casualties. I'm a medic, but I was in a fair amount. Almost got killed on the first trip a good handful of times, and then so I just don't like the war aspect when you see your friends get killed. And you're stuck in a hospital bed on top of all this stuff that's, you know, I didn't shit for a week. I pissed blood for a week. I've had tons of nights of excruciating pain. That's the life of an amputee. Or there are guys that are worse than me, so I'm just grateful for having what I have. And, yeah, that's the beginning of it. Like, especially on ketamine, when you're going through all that and you're just like, I was telling like the people that took the trash out in the room, like, "Hey, I'm grateful for you, brother." Like, right on, brother.
What is ketamine like after a catastrophic injury like that? Does it relieve the pain? Does it just put you in another dimension?
So ketamine is an MDA.
Pull this sucker right.
Yeah. Ketamine is an MDA antagonist in the brain. So it essentially is a dissociative. So the way that it feels, because we learned this in class as a medic and everything, but the way that it feels is kind of, it takes your perspective, and it's like, it always felt like a whirlwind if I was getting a push of it. but it's like you're starting to get your vision masked, and you're still there, but you're dipping into like subconscious because you're still conscious. Because unconscious would mean that you're like, you pass out and you cannot have a gag reflex depending on how unconscious you are. So ketamine, I would close my eyes and immediately trip the most insane balls that you could imagine, and open them, and I'd be back in the room and I'd be like, what the fuck?
Whoa.
And then a friend of mine, when I left my first rotation, he was an Air Force CCT that got blown up in the same village I had a few casualties in. He stepped on ID. He's an above the knee, some missing fingers. But when he was on ketamine, when he was awake and looking around, he'd see the walls on fire. And then there'd be like women, like white, pale skin in the corners, peeling the skin off their back. And he was like awake. And I was like, dude, that's
Shit.
like whatever. I don't know. It must be like someone's psychology when they go in, like set and setting type thing. But I was in it when I got a lot of ketamine. My legs are blown off. I'm getting worked on. I'm telling dudes how to treat me. I cut my own shirt off, and then I get the ketamine, and I'm like in and out, and I see these visions back and forth. And like I was convinced there were two distinct moments. I was like, I'm not going to make it, and had that conversation. So, whew. And what's surreal about this right here is that you were talking to him on this show, and you guys talked about combat medics, and you were like, I just sing in key, and I was like, right on, they're talking about me, and then I got all kinds of jacked up. Makes you appreciate life. And I've gone through a huge development last year through depression, and then this year after this blast of like being grateful and like doing introspection and communicating and having empathy for other people and being a compassionate human, which General Mattis has told us, a group of us on the way back from my first trip. It's like, don't let this experience of war make you a more hateful human being because people haven't experienced it. Allow yourself to go through post-traumatic growth and become a better human being and treat other people like you want to be treated. And I would add on to that, which came from Tim Ferriss, treat yourself the way you treat other people too.
Descendants of Nazis, and they bring out this grandfather's chest of things and war medals and all this jazz. Like, what is this feeling like? Do you feel like these people got away with something? I mean, they kind of did, but these aren't the people that did it. But they're the descendants of the people that did it, and they're still worshiping those people in some way.
Yeah, I had a lot of soul searching, trying to figure out what is the appropriate thing. What's the appropriate response? What am I supposed to be feeling right now? And I think I'm a pretty exposed person. Like, I'm in tuned with what I feel. And one of the hardest days, we're in Chile, and I interviewed this man and this woman, and they are both. One of them is a second generation. So she was born on Colonia Dignidad, on this compound as a Nazi. Separated from her parents. She didn't know who her parents was. No, I'm sorry. She was brought there at like age 3 or 4. But she grew up there, and they're separated from her parents. She didn't know who her parents was. Her husband was a Chilean boy that was local. And he heard about this new hospital that's built by Dr. Mengele, and how everybody has food there. And he's a poor Chilean kid, so he was able to get onto the compound. Well, the locals and the Germans aren't supposed to be together, so he was kind of kept separated. Well, because he was local, they started testing him, and it got really violent and disgusting. By the time he is a teenager, he's being thrown out of windows, having his bones broken, being nursed back to health, being set on fire, being nursed back to health for like 10, 15 years. He finally talks what will be his future wife into escaping with him. And they sneak out in a cheese truck because one of his friends, when he was a Chilean kid, grew up to be a police officer in a nearby, and he was able to get a letter out to them, be like, please come help us. And they came in to do a health inspection, and they hopped inside of this cheese truck, and they got away. So I'm talking to this guy, and he's telling me about the things that happened to him. And I'm not going to get into it I mean, but they were the most horrible things that could happen to a little boy that you could imagine. You know, beyond rape, beyond being burnt alive, beyond being broken. I mean, for years and years and years. And I'm shaking because man, I'm in Afghanistan, and you know, they threw some acid on some kids, and I found those guys and I killed those guys. Because that's what you do when you hurt little kids. You know, I got a soft spot for people that can't take care of themselves, that can protect themselves. I think every real human isn't going to let anything weaker them ever get hurt in front of them. And so I'm shaking listening to this story, you know, and I was like, and I know I have to go back to Colonia Dignidad the next day and put on like I'm a tourist guy hosting a travel show. And that was our disguise to get in there, was like, oh, you know, this is a beautiful Bavarian village. You can come here. That was our little way in. And I was just going to go in and destroy that whole entire place. That was my plan. And the guy's looking at me and he's like, I see your anger, you know, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go hurt all of them. He's like, no, you know, no more pain. And I was like, okay, what's going on? And he looks at his wife and he goes, she saved me. Every time that I was burnt, every time that I was broken, it was just love. That's how I got out. That's why we're alive today. And we're going to die of old age together with the woman that I fell in love with on this colony. The only thing that matters is love. And I was like, God damn, I like you, but I still want to go hurt all of those people. You know, so it's like.
So these people that were doing this to him, what was their objective?
They wanted to understand, I mean, so the same test that Joseph Mengele was doing in Germany in 1943, he's now doing in Chile in 1953. He just has a different population to test. They're not
Jesus
Jews.
Christ.
They're Chilean boys. And they're strong. And they're wiry. And they need less food. They're not like I'm using quotation marks, the cockroach Jews that you just couldn't kill. You know, these were young, strong Browns. Like, these are their words verbatim that I'm using. You know, and it's like, yeah, I want to tear your guys' faces out and, you know, stick soldering irons in your ear because you guys are so evil. But then I'm the same as them. So I was just real torn. I didn't know what to do. I just wanted to kill them all.
Well, it's the worst aspects of human beings is this desire to hurt people that are weaker than you and torture them, and this just coming into contact with that, and then some guy who has this most beautiful response to it.
Yeah.
You know, love saved me. I just want to die. Oh, fuck.
You're a better human than I. So I never knew how to respond to these things. I wanted to, every time I'd see a new SS medal, or I'd see, you know, like the cross that they won for valor, like crazy, the equivalent of Medal of Honors these guys have in their parlors. I'm like, these were Nazis. You realize your grandpa is yes. Total pride swelling in their chest. You know, I was like, I want to crack you in the face, dude.
So when I was a kid, my dad was an architect, and so I worked on a lot of construction sites, and I met a lot of junkies. A lot of people on construction sites are either alcoholics or drug addicts. And there was this one guy that I really liked. He's a funny guy, man. Really funny guy, and he's in a band. His name is Robbie. Funny fucking dude. Loved hanging around with him. But just couldn't stay off the coke.
Wow.
Couldn't stay off the coke. And you could totally tell. He'd be honest about it too. Say how he went off the rails, and we would be working together. He was a carpenter, and I was, you know, like a laborer. So I was like an apprentice. And so he'd be, you know, talking to me while he's explaining to me how to do things and stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, you know, I'm just fucking tired of this. I'm getting my shit together. The band's getting back together again. We're writing songs and this and that. And then he'd come in Monday looking like shit. Just looking like shit. Real grumpy. Didn't want to talk. Had a headache.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he'd admit it, you know, went off the rails.
The saddest thing is that when you first start doing drugs, and I don't know about you, but I had a phenomenal time doing cocaine. You know, mushrooms and all the stuff I did as a teenager was like, I never got hooked on it. And if you do it, you know, maybe I did coke 50 times without ever getting hooked. It's a blast. That's the best kept secret. But then once you get hooked, you're not even having fun anymore. You're just maintaining. You're just feeding it so you don't crash. You know, with heroin, you're just trying to avoid withdrawals. You're not even feeling that great anymore.
I think with Robbie too, part of the problem was he was very disappointed in himself.
Yeah.
You know, it was booze too. He would just go off the rails and try to keep it together. You know, it's like there's a lot of people out there that they have a dream, and then the pressure of trying to reach that dream, like his dream is to be in a successful band, right? And the pressure of trying to reach that dream and see it to fruition, it just seems unreachable.
Yeah.
It seems too far off. And here you are, you're in your 30s and you're working a construction job, and you know, you fucking work all day in Boston in the winter. You're tired as shit when you get home. You don't want to go to band practice.
Yeah.
You get home at 6:30, you have dinner, and now it's 7:30. You got to get up.
Right.
You got to get up in a few hours.
Right.
Like, what are you doing? When are you going to bed? You know, you got to get up at 6. Like,
Then you go to
fuck.
band practice and the drummer doesn't show up, so
Right.
you can't practice. Or
He's 45 minutes late. His car breaks down, and you're fucking pissed, and your
Some-
girlfriend's
some-
screaming at you.
yeah. Yeah, oh yeah. Then try to have a relationship on top of that. Tell
Yeah.
that girl you can't go out on Saturday night ever because you're doing gigs.
And then the gigs suck, and you're not making any money, and they're like, you should get a job. The gigs suck. You should get a job.
Yeah.
Fuck.
And then you're in a band, so girls are throwing themselves at you. Have an affair. She's got some coke.
Now it's good. Now the story turned around.
turned it around.
Now it's exciting again.
Born to be wild.
Dum, dum, dum.
Sometimes when I work at casino, there'll always be that band in the lounge just playing like Born to Be Wild and
Yeah.
all those songs. And like you'll see people that are like 57 dancing, and you see them and they're dancing, and it's like they're just reliving the only joy they had in their life, which was like when they were young, dancing a rock. And this band is fucking, they're gods to them.
Yeah, the time when you're young, when you're having fun, is so fleeting.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden responsibilities stack up. And all of a sudden, you know, you have to pay bills. You have obligations. You have so much that you have to think about.
Yeah.
For so many people, there's this period of their life where they look back to whimsically. Like, that was the time when I was free.
Yeah.
I was young and my dick got hard all the time.
I could go 2 or 3 times.
3 times in a night. You're like,
Shit.
wild, man. I can't believe it.
And you think anything is possible. I
Yeah.
mean, that's really
Anything can happen.
that's the loss of innocence, is when you realize at a certain point that you do have to pick a path and stay on it,
Oh, yeah. You better.
because you got to pay the bills with it. And you know, and then what's so sad is you see people that work so fucking hard for not a lot of money, and you know, bills just add up, and then they save just enough when they get their vacation twice a year. They'll go to like a cruise and they'll just drink nonstop for a week. And at the
Yeah.
end of it, they're just hungover. They blew the excess money they had, and that was it. That's what you worked all year for.
I had a friend of mine who worked in a restaurant, and one of the guys who worked with saved up his money for 8 years. Went to Vegas and blew it in one day.
God.
It was the most heartbreaking story. This poor guy, I think he was a dishwasher, and he worked there for 8 years.
Yeah.
Like, set aside 50 here, 25 there. Set aside for 8 fucking years.
Yeah.
And I think it was some good amount of money, like $30,000.
Shit.
Went there with a plan. This is it, baby. I'm good at blackjack, or whatever the fuck he played.
He read a book.
A lot of guys read books.
Oh, in the movie Monsters, Inc. Oh my gosh! You didn't think I was going there, did you?
No.
Those doors were 4-dimensional portals to another.
That's possible?
Well, if you had 4 dimensions, that's what it would look like. Do you remember the movie?
Yes.
They take the doors home.
Yes.
They open the door, and they're in the closet of the kid that they're going to terrorize.
Yes.
That's a wormhole. That is what access to the 4th dimension looks like.
Do you think scientifically that's possible one day?
I
that
hope
people-
so. I hope so.
Really?
Because here's the example. We've got a nice broad desk we here at this interview, right? So desk is 2 dimensions. It's got length and width. And I can start putting papers on this desk, and I can lay them out mosaic style. And then all of a sudden I have no more room to put a sheet of paper. If I'm an ant living in this surface of the desk, I say, no more room. But wait a minute, we are 3-dimensional people. And I can put an organizer and stack things vertically. So I can take a sheet of paper, and now I can put it higher up than the surface of the desk. The ant will say, "Where did it go? Oh my gosh, it disappeared in some portal. Where? No, what is that?" It went into the third dimension, and the ant bound to, ant obviously is a three-dimensional thing.
Right.
Imagine it only lives in 2 dimensions. You would have made that paper disappear into a third dimension, and it will have no clue where it went because you had a portal. You had access to that extra dimension. So look at how much you can store on a desk when you have access to a third dimension above it. Vastly more than just papers mosaiced out on the surface. So now let's up this example by a dimension. You're storing boxes in a room. Oh, I ran out of room. No, you didn't. Let's open this 4-dimensional door. You open it, put the boxes through the door, close the door, box is gone.
That'd be awesome for hoarders.
You look around the other side of
Right.
the door, there's nothing there.
Right.
Your side of the door, nothing there. It's just a door. That is a portal to a 4th dimension that can hold vastly more content than what you're stuck storing in the 3-dimensional space of your room.
Now that concept, though.
That's a brilliant concept. And even though it has monsters that don't exist, that all speak English, and one of them is a cyclops, and one of them is I'm not judging the biophysiology of these creatures, but they got the physics of 4-dimensional portals completely accurate.
Yeah, to never be around other humans.
Do you know what happened to the Unabomber? Do you know how that happened?
The brother?
Yeah.
Because he was pedantic.
Oh yeah, it was that, but it was also the Unabomber himself. Ted Kaczynski was a part of the Harvard LSD studies.
Was he?
Yeah, they cooked his brain.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a documentary about it called The Net.
Someone wrote a great tweet where they go, plot twist, Greta Thunberg grows up to become the Unabomber in a redemption arc. I'm like, that is hilarious. Because he was a violent environmentalist and a very bright man.
He's a professor at Berkeley. So he went to school at Harvard. They put him in the Harvard LSD studies. They cooked his fucking dome, and then he disappeared, went to Berkeley, worked as a professor to earn enough money so he could buy a cabin and implement his plan to kill everybody who was involved in technology so he'd stop this takeover of the human race, which probably is true.
Yeah. John Waters, the director, he has a replica of the Unabomber's cabin as a room in his house. Isn't that great? I love that.
Who's got the real cabin?
Oh, that's a good question.
It was at a museum, I think, that actually just closed. So I don't know where it's going to go now. There was a museum called the Newseum in DC.
New York.
I think it just closed because they couldn't.
Traveling
get people
exhibit.
to-
Wait, they took the whole cabin and reconstructed it?
I believe I've seen pictures of it. Yeah.
Oh,
We need to find it.
wow, that's really cool.
We need to find it.
I love stuff like that.
I do too.
I did an article years ago about all these relics. Like, where's Monica Lewinsky's dress? And like, she's got it hidden somewhere.
Do you think she does?
Yeah, the article that people did research. She still has it somewhere.
Oh my God! What
Yeah.
a nightmare for poor Bill. You get your dick sucked at 94, and this lady's still carrying that jizz-stained dress. Like, Jesus Christ, lady, let it go. He's probably going, well, she's probably thrown it away by now. No, Bill, never.
Listen. Oh wow.
Wow. So
I
that's
thought
the
that
actual.
was. I thought that was a replica.
I mean, it says it was it, and it closed
Holy crap.
last week.
Yeah.
So I don't know where it's at. At the moment.
That is amazing.
They closed last week. I
Storage,
missed
yeah.
it by a week.
Yeah.
Shit, that could have been out here, bro.
Wow.
We could have. That'd probably be an expensive buy. Probably like me and Marilyn Manson
The place had some
auctioning
other
against each
interesting
other.
Things too.
I guess we're just gonna have to mail
Right.
someone a bomb.
He would probably buy it.
Who, Manson?
Yeah.
Oh,
Is
that's
that
up his
the
alley.
manifesto?
Yeah, original copy.
That's the original. Holy crap!
That's dark.
Everyone tells me to read it. I haven't read it, but they said it's very smart.
I read parts of it. That's one of the things that's disturbing. It's just like well thought out. And also the argument is sound. Technology will inevitably lead to better technology, which inevitably leads to artificial intelligence, which is inevitably going to take over the world.
Well, there's that whole singularity thing, right? What's the Ray Kurzweil?
Kurzweil.
And I don't know. I haven't checked in years, but I don't know if we're on track with what he predicted. I think we're supposed to be further along. Because remember in the 50s there were going to be flying cars, and there's no flying cars.
Yeah. He's a 2045 guy. And what he says is that the exponential increase of technology, if you follow it to
Right.
The prediction is somewhere in the neighborhood of 2045 they'll achieve this singularity.
Yeah, but I think they're also finding now that there actually is somewhat asymptotic, and it does at a certain point you are having like physical limitations to increasing the speed, and it's not going to be that easy.
Yeah, well then quantum supremacy comes along. Do you know they're trying to change the name of quantum supremacy because it confuses people with white supremacy, and we really shouldn't support that. So we need to change quantum supremacy.
They had, was it IBM or whatever, had the quantum computer, and the other people were like, this isn't really quantum because it's blah, 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 blah. This was a big controversy just in the last month.
Those quantum people.
I found its new location. After the Montana Historical Society tried to get it, it now exists at this fun place.
The FBI Experience?
Wow.
Oh, Jesus.
They own it. So there's like a new museum
Interdivisional
there.
Cooperation. FBI.
Oh my
Dun,
God.
dun, dun.
Just a propaganda house.
Wow.
Oh, God.
So they wanted to get... So he was in Montana when he was blowing everybody up.
Someone tried to buy the land, I guess, or it was for sale at one time. But whoever runs this museum tried to get a hold of it, and I guess the FBI said, we're going to keep it.
Yeah, I can understand why they would want to, right?
Of course, yeah.
It's probably very valuable. People probably will go to the FBI museum specifically just to see that cabin.
No one wants to go to the FBI museum otherwise. Would you go to the FBI museum?
No.
It's gonna be
Does his brother suspect that he was doing it all
Well, you know
along
why?
before the manifesto, or did he read the manifesto and then...
Well, because the Unabomber, as a kid, was always annoyed by people saying you could have your cake and eat it too. Because he's like, no, it's you can eat your cake and have it too. And the Unabomber used that phrase, air quotes, correctly. And the guy's like, that's my brother. And that's how they figured it out, because he was being a pedantic dick. Yeah. So everyone who's correcting people on spelling on Twitter, shut up and relax.
Oh, that's crazy. I thought he just recognized the style of writing.
No, I mean, double check me, but I'm 90%
makes
sure
sense.
this is correct.
You're saying that now.
Eat your cake and have it too.
It's actually ringing a bell.
Yeah.
God damn.
It's
But imagine like that if he was a normal guy and they just filled him up with acid and
Yeah.
it made him say, "Oh my God, the technology's going to take over." And he's just started his calling in life is to kill the people. They're advancing technology with bombs.
when you're that smart, you're already kind of tripping, because
Yes.
regular people don't seem like the same thing as you do.
Right. And maybe a little schizophrenic, and then they fill him up with a fucking half a gallon of acid.
Like, how much did they give him? Do you know?
Who knows? They were experimenting with people.
I'm sure it's not going to be small doses.
Do you know what Operation Midnight Climax is?
No.
It's one of my favorite fucked up CIA experiments they ever did. They went to brothels and they set up a brothel with all these prostitutes and these johns, and they dosed all the guys and used hidden cameras.
And do you know what else?
So, because the guys couldn't talk about it. Because, like, what happened to you, Harry? Somebody gave me a Mickey. They slipped me a Mickey, and I had a bad time. Where'd this happen, Harry? Oh, I don't know. I guess I was at the diner or something. You can't say, I went to the whorehouse trying to get my dick sucked, and they gave me acid, these assholes. You can't say that.
And we've been trained since kindergarten that if someone says the CIA has experimented on regular people, they will tell you, and admitted it, they will tell you with a straight face that that's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
They will just use that word and stop thinking.
Yeah.
And we've been trained for decades. And it's like, wait a minute. We've been hearing 3 years that there was a conspiracy between Trump and the Putin administration. That's a conspiracy, whether it's true or not. Epstein was a conspiracy. He was conspiring with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Weinstein, Bill Cosby. These are all conspiracies that are widely known. But as soon as you hear that term, like racist, oh, conversation's over. I don't need to hear anything else. It's amazing.
Oh, you believe in conspiracy theories? Oh, yeah.
What, 9/11 didn't happen?
Come on. There's a supermassive black hole at the center of every galaxy.
Yeah.
But
we
there's
think-
also other black holes that aren't necessarily in the center of galaxies.
Yeah, so these little ones, well, little, you know, they're a few times the mass of the sun, and they're from collapsed stars. So they are stars at the end of their life, very bigger than the sun, more massive than the sun, but they run out of their fuel and they start to collapse because gravity squashes them. And if they're sufficiently massive, then there's nothing that can stop the collapse. And so they collapse, as far as we know, to a point, right? And essentially an infinitely dense point. We don't really know what happens we don't know what happens right in the middle. But they collapse to such an extent that there's a region around it from which light can't escape. And so nothing can escape. And that's a black hole.
And what happens to them? Do they travel? Are they moving through space?
Yeah, they're still stars,
Right.
So they're still there. They're surrounded this region where if you fall in, it's called the event horizon, and if you go across that horizon, then you are going to the center. There's one way of thinking about it, which is quite cool, which is that the time and space sort of flip is one way to think about it. So in the same way that we are going into the future now, so we're going to tomorrow. There's nothing we can do about it. We are going to tomorrow. In the same way, if you fall in across the event horizon of a black hole, you are going to the middle, the singularity it's called. So that's your future. Every line of your future points to the center of the black hole. So it's kind of the ultimate of no escape, the ultimate prison. You're going to get squashed to an infinitely dense point.
But not
basically.
every star becomes a black hole at the end of its life.
No, because if something like the sun,
We have a
then
small star.
it's quite small, yeah, and when it collapses, there's a sort of a pressure, a force, if you like, which is caused by the fact that electrons don't like to be very close to each other. So it's called the Pauli exclusion principle. But essentially what happens is that, so as they get squashed closer and closer together, they move faster and faster to sort of get out of each other's way, if you like. And that makes a force which holds them up. And so that creates what's called a white dwarf star. So you can have a blob of matter. They're about the size of the Earth, but they're about the mass of the sun. And so that's for smaller stars. They end up as these white dwarf things, which are very dense objects. There's another version, which is called a neutron star, which is the same thing, but for neutrons. And they move faster and faster. So if it's massive enough that it overwhelms the electron thing, then the electrons sort of crush into protons and turn into neutrons, and the whole thing starts again. And so a neutron star can be, at least 1.5 times the mass of the sun, let's say, but it can be about 10 miles across. So that's an incredibly dense ball of matter held up by the neutrons moving around. It's got a fancy name. It's called neutron degeneracy pressure, but that's what it is. But if you go even bigger, then even that can't hold it up. And as far as we know, then there's no known force that we know of that can hold the thing up if it's too massive. And so that's when it just almost winks out of existence, if you like. It collapses and collapses and collapses. And that's when you get a black hole.
We try to put that into perspective. The sun is 1,000,000 times bigger than the Earth.
Yeah.
And this neutron star is, would you say, 1.5 times the mass of the sun,
so
but 10 miles wide?
Yeah. So, and there's loads of those around. They're called pulsars. So we see those all over the place. The first one that was discovered was called LGM1 because they spin very fast. And it was called LGM1 because it's a very regular pulse, and they thought it was Little Green Men. So they called it kind of jokingly Little Green Men 1. And so, yeah, we've seen that there's one called the Crab Pulsar, which is in the Crab Nebula, which we saw the supernova explosion. So that's when one of these stars explodes at the end of its life and then collapses to form a neutron star. And we saw that in 1054 AD.
Wasn't there some speculation that our solar system at one point was a binary star system, and that one of those stars had become a dwarf?
I don't know.
Someone had read something about that in relationship to the dense object they believe is outside the Kuiper Belt.
Yeah, I mean, there's some evidence. There's a bit of evidence that there's something out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of the periodic extinctions and things on Earth, like you get periodic bombardments from out in the Kuiper Belt. So yeah, I think one of the theories is
periodic extinctions.
Well, yeah. So for example, like there have been mass extinctions on Earth when a lot of the life died, and we don't know what caused all those, but sometimes they're impacts from space. That seems clear. And so, yeah, there are theories that there's something orbiting out there which can disrupt all these objects out in the Kuiper Belt that sends loads of comets and asteroids inwards to the inner solar system and can cause havoc. And so there's some people look at those theories.
What other crazy trips do you want to do that you haven't done yet?
Oh, there's a lot, man. I mean, the one that I've had on my bucket list since I was so there's a couple. One is there's one place on Earth left where there's true cannibals, It's Papua New Guinea. And unlike the missionary that went in, with an agenda, I would just love to actually see these cannibalistic tribes. So I'd love to do that. Nobody has successfully, unless it's happened very recently and I'm unaware of, successfully done source to sea of the Congo River from guerrilla warfare, from crazy waterfalls, disease. That's an expedition I'd like to try. And then when it comes to wildlife, I mean, the list is infinite. There's so many of these animals that I'm desperate to try and find.
Those sound like very dangerous trips. Like visiting cannibals?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how to say this without sounding arrogant, but that's what sounds exciting to me.
Right.
Is taking that shot that other people aren't taking.
So have people visited these cannibals and come out of there before?
Yep. There was a Nat Geo photographer who got some incredible photos. They're called the Caraway tribe. And he went in there, took him a while for them to kind of assimilate and get comfortable. And then he got these photos that are just mind blowing. Now,
how often do they practice cannibalism?
It's not a daily thing. It is a spiritual thing where they actually eat the other tribes deceased after a war or an intertribal conflict as a way to like ward off bad spirits. So it's not like a daily thing. It's not like they're going out hunting each other. It's more like when these things occur, they have to eat a certain kill or a certain body to keep evil spirits at bay.
Do they get that version of mad cow's disease that cannibals get? Was it Jacobs Creutzfeldt?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think it's probably infrequent enough that they're not getting it. Because like in the South Pacific, they got that all the time, but they were eating each other like all the time. Yeah.
Well, I think you get it from nerves, right? In nerve tissue or brains.
It's brain. Yeah.
That's where they're getting it from. It's essentially mad cow disease.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this guy hanging out with them there?
Yeah, it starts off with sounding he's eating something. I don't think he's eating people with them.
He's gonna eat a fucking person.
That's
can't be
not
a
a person. That's a pig or something.
Yeah.
I don't think they'd show that.
But yeah, look at the tribe. I mean, they just look amazing.
Yeah, but it is just so incredible that there's still people that live the way they lived many, many, many thousands of years ago, and they essentially just get their resources from the land, from the area they live, and they're just rocking it old school.
And then for me, like the cultural significance is huge, but what's the biological area like? You're right. Nobody's going in there. How much biological study's been done? The answer is none.
And these people have large like, look at that lady. Oh my God.
Isn't she amazing?
Wow. Yeah. Have you read Sapiens?
Sapiens? No, I'm not sure. Evolutionary book about human history.
Noah Yuval Harari. I think that's the name of his. He's amazing.
Writing it down.
Yeah, it's a great book. But one of the things that they talk about in the book was these nomadic tribes that would. Yeah, that's it. Yuval Noah Harari. I fucked up his name. They would talk about these nomadic tribes that would kill the old ladies, like kill the people that were burdens, and like just shows
and eat
like
them.
No, just kill them. Just talking about like when people became a problem,
right?
They would just kill them, and this was normal. But they got along together great. Everybody was like laughing and smiling. Everybody's really friendly. But as soon as someone seemed to be a problem, they'd fucking club them from behind and.
It's like, this is going to sound just awful, but doesn't that make sense?
It kind of does. It sucks, but it kind of does.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you're a burden on the community or on the society. There's no fucking old folks home out there.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. Like, to us, in our culture, that's absurd, but as a culture removed from the rest of the world, makes sense. Like, you're a burden, you've had a good life, it's time to move on.
And they're nomadic. That's the other thing. It's like they have to keep moving. So if someone stops, and like there's one guy, he was sick, and so they left him on a tree, and he became covered with buzzard shit because the vultures would just sit over him and wait for him to die. But he eventually recovered.
Oh my
and
God.
he caught up with the rest of the tribe, and for the rest of they called him something like buzzard shit or something like that. That was their nickname for him. Yeah.
Imagine being that guy. Imagine sitting under a tree looking up at vultures being like, it's moments till I die and they're going to drop down and eat me.
At least they're polite enough to wait for you to die.
It's true.
Like they don't just, the guy probably couldn't have fought him off.
If that was a hyena,
yeah, dude.